Taejo had never known fear. As a warrior of the Stellar Collective, he was made for battle. His people removed fear from their soldiers long ago. They believed fear was only useful for weaker species, not for the advanced Voidborn like him. When humans first appeared at the edge of collective space, no one worried. They looked small and weak. Their ships were simple, their bodies fragile. The leaders of the collective thought humans might be useful workers. Nothing more. Everything changed during what later became known as the Proxima Incident. Taejo stood on the observation deck of the collective battleship, Eternal Vigilance. The massive vessel orbited Proxima Centauri's fourth planet, where a joint outpost had been built. Through the viewport, he watched the small human ships dock at the station. They looked like toys next to the collective's sleek warships. "You will serve as liaison to the human delegation," Commander Ryu told him. The commander was old for a Voidborn, with battle scars across his gray skin. "Study them carefully. They do not think like us." "I understand, Commander," Taejo replied. "Their technology is primitive. Their tactics will be simple." Ryu's four eyes narrowed. "Do not underestimate them. There is something unusual about these humans. They make decisions that defy logic." Taejo nodded but didn't truly understand. The Voidborn valued efficiency above all else. Their bodies were designed for combat, with reinforced bones, redundant organs, and skin that could withstand vacuum for short periods. Humans seemed to have no such advantages. The next day, Taejo met the human captain for the first time. Her name was Hana, and she was much smaller than he expected. The top of her head barely reached his chest. Her skin was soft-looking, without the protective scales of a Voidborn. Yet she met his gaze without fear. "It's an honor to meet you, Liaison Taejo," she said, extending her hand in the human greeting custom. Taejo carefully took her hand, mindful of his strength. "The honor is mine, Captain Hana. Welcome to Proxima Station." Over the next few days, Taejo showed Hana and her team around the station. He was surprised by their questions. They asked about defense systems, emergency protocols, and power distribution, not the questions of simple workers, but of tactical minds. "Your species is very curious," Taejo observed as they walked through the station's central hub. Hana smiled. "It's our nature. We want to understand everything we encounter. Even things that could harm you? Especially those things," she replied. On the fifth day, alarms blared throughout the station. Taejo's communication implant activated immediately. "Scourge vessels detected," Commander Ryu's voice said in his mind. Multiple signatures approaching from the outer system. Taejo felt his body tense. The Scourge were the oldest enemy of the collective, perhaps of all life in the galaxy. They were not truly alive as most species understood it. They were something between machine and organism, consuming all in their path. "What's happening?" Hana asked, noticing his reaction. "We are under attack," Taejo said simply. "The Scourge have found us." He expected panic from the human. Instead, her expression became focused, her movements precise. "How long until they reach us?" she asked. "Approximately 2 hours. Evacuation protocols are being initiated." Hana nodded and activated her own communication device. "All human personnel, this is Captain Hana. Battle stations." "This is not a drill." Taejo watched in surprise as the humans around them moved with practiced efficiency. They had been on the station less than a week, yet they seemed to know exactly where to go. "Your people respond well to crisis," he noted as they hurried toward the command center. "We've had plenty of practice," Hana replied. "Humanity has faced extinction more than once. In the command center, chaos reigned." The station's sensors showed 12 Scourge hive ships approaching, each carrying thousands of drone warriors. The collective had only 3 battleships in the system, including the Eternal Vigilance. Commander Ryu was coordinating the evacuation. "All non-combat personnel must board transports immediately. We have begun loading civilians, and what's the defense plan?" Hana asked. Ryu looked at her with all 4 eyes. "Defense is not possible. We will delay the Scourge while the evacuation proceeds." "How many civilians are on the station?" Hana asked. "Approximately 3,000, Taejo answered. "Mostly researchers and their families." Hana studied the tactical display. "How long will the evacuation take?" "At least 4 hours, Ryu said. "We do not have 4 hours." Hana turned to her own officers who had joined them. "Lieutenant Do-hyun, what's our combat readiness?" A human male with short black hair stepped forward. All 20 soldiers are armed and ready, Captain. We've distributed our heavy weapons as you ordered. Tejo was confused. 20 soldiers? Against the Scourge? That is not logical. Hana ignored his comment. We need to hold the outer defense ring as long as possible. If we can keep the Scourge busy at the perimeter, the evacuation has a chance. Commander Ryu shook his head. The outer defenses will fall within minutes of engagement. Your forces will be wasted. Then we'll fall back to secondary positions, Hana said firmly. We fight, we retreat, we fight again. We buy time. Tejo had never heard such a strategy. Voidborn warriors either stood their ground or withdrew completely. This constant fighting retreat seemed inefficient. Your people will die for nothing, he told Hana. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. No one dies for nothing if they die protecting others. Before Tejo could respond, the station shook violently. The Scourge had arrived earlier than expected. First wave of drones approaching the outer airlocks, a collective officer reported. They're cutting through. Commander Ryu turned to Tejo. Escort the human captain to the evacuation shuttles. Her safety is priority. No, Hana said firmly. My place is with my soldiers. This is not a request, Ryu began. But Hana was already moving toward the exit. Lieutenant Do-hyun, with me. We're heading to Section 4. Jiwoo, take your squad to Section 7. Minho, secure the path to the civilian docks. Her officers nodded and moved out. Tejo looked at Commander Ryu, who seemed as surprised as he was by the humans' actions. Follow them, Ryu ordered after a moment. Learn what you can. The collective must understand how these humans fight. Tejo hurried after Hana and Do-hyun. They moved through the corridors with weapons ready, gathering more human soldiers as they went. Your commander ordered you to evacuate, Tejo reminded Hana as they reached Section 4, a large hub connecting several corridors. And I respectfully declined, she replied, checking her weapon. We have people to protect. The station shook again, harder this time. Emergency lights flashed as the main power fluctuated. They've breached the outer hull, Tejo reported, receiving updates through his implant. Drones are entering Sections 2 and 9. Hana positioned her soldiers at key points around the hub. They set up barricades using whatever they could find. Tables, storage containers, equipment racks. Why are you doing this? Tejo asked. The logical choice is to save yourselves. Do-hyun looked up from where he was distributing ammunition. Because it's the right thing to do. Before Tejo could question this strange answer, the sound of screeching metal echoed down the corridor. The Scourge were coming. Get ready, Hana called to her people. Her face showed tension. Her body was alert, but she did not show panic. Tejo drew his plasma lance, the standard weapon of Voidborn warriors. He had fought Scourge before, but always in organized collective formations with clear objectives and exit strategies. This improvised defense with a handful of humans seemed doomed to fail. The first Scourge drone rounded the corner, a nightmare of metal and flesh fused together, with multiple limbs ending in blades and acid sprayers. It moved with unnatural speed, scuttling along walls and ceiling. The humans opened fire immediately. Their projectile weapons seemed primitive to Tejo, but they fired with remarkable accuracy, targeting the drone's sensor clusters and joint mechanisms. More drones followed the first, dozens of them pouring into the corridor. Tejo fired his plasma lance, cutting through 3 drones with one shot. He expected the humans to break formation at the sight of the Scourge horde, but they held steady, covering each other and maintaining disciplined fire. As the battle intensified, Tejo began to notice something strange. The humans' vital signs showed clear signs of fear, elevated heart rates, stress hormones, dilated pupils. Yet they fought with unwavering determination. This made no sense to him. In Voidborn psychology, fear led to retreat or surrender. These humans were afraid. He could see it in their faces, yet they fought harder because of it. When a drone broke through their line and lunged at Hana, Tejo moved to intercept it. But Do-hyun was faster, throwing himself between his captain and the drone. The Scourge's blade pierced his shoulder, but he emptied his weapon into the creature's body at point-blank range. As the battle raged on, Tejo began to feel something unfamiliar stirring within him. Watching these fragile humans fight with such courage despite their fear, he experienced the first flicker of something new, something that would eventually teach him the true meaning of fear and of courage. The battle in Section 4 lasted for 27 minutes. To Tejo, it felt much longer. The humans fought in a way he had never seen before. They did not stand in perfect formation like void-born soldiers. They moved constantly, adapting to each new threat. "Fall back to position 2, Hana shouted as more Scourge drones poured through the breach. Her face was streaked with sweat and blood, but her voice remained strong. The humans retreated in pairs, one covering while the other moved. Taejo followed their example, though the tactic seemed strange to him. Void-born warriors were taught to hold their ground until ordered to withdraw completely. "Why do you not stand and fight?" he asked Do-hyun as they reached the second defensive position, a narrower corridor with better cover. Do-hyun winced as he checked his wounded shoulder. "Because we die, and dying doesn't help anyone. Better to give ground slowly and make them pay for every step." This concept was new to Taejo. The Voidborn saw battle as a simple equation, victory or defeat. This middle path, fighting while retreating, losing ground but gaining time, was not part of their military doctrine. "Station update," Taejo reported, receiving information through his implant. "Evacuation is 25% complete. Estimated time remaining 3 hours. Hana nodded grimly. "We need to hold longer." She turned to her soldiers. "Conserve ammunition. Make every shot count." The Scourge attacked again, this time with larger drones. These were the size of small vehicles with multiple weapon appendages and thicker armor. The humans called them brutes. "Aim for the joints," Hana ordered. "Minjae, use the plasma charges." A young human male nodded and pulled out small devices from his pack. He threw them with surprising accuracy, the charges sticking to the lead brute's leg joints. When they exploded, the creature stumbled, crashing into the wall. Taejo was impressed. The humans had clearly studied Scourge anatomy and found weaknesses that even collective scientists had overlooked. "How did you know to target those joints?" he asked as he fired his plasma lance at another brute. "We studied the footage you shared with us," Hana explained between shots. "Your people focus on destroying the Scourge completely. We looked for ways to disable them when we can't destroy them." The battle continued for another hour, with the defenders slowly giving ground, falling back from one position to the next. 3 more humans fell to Scourge attacks. Each time their comrades dragged them back, treating their wounds when possible, closing their eyes when it was too late. Taejo had seen many Voidborn die in battle, but never had he witnessed such care for the fallen. Voidborn left their dead behind, seeing the bodies as empty vessels once life had departed. "Why do you risk yourselves for the dead?" he asked when Hana and another soldier named Yunji pulled a fallen comrade from the battle line. "Because everyone deserves to go home," Yunji said simply, "even if they're going home in a box." This made no logical sense to Taejo, yet he found himself helping them carry the dead soldier to a safer area. Something about their dedication affected him in ways he could not explain. By the second hour of battle, they had been pushed back to the central hub. The evacuation was now 50% complete, but the defenders' numbers had dwindled. Of the 20 human soldiers who had started the fight, only 12 remained combat effective. The others were dead or too wounded to continue. Taejo himself had sustained damage. A Scourge acid spray had burned through part of his exoskeleton, exposing the sensitive tissues beneath. The pain was significant, but his Voidborn physiology allowed him to compartmentalize it. "You should seek medical attention," Hana told him, noticing his injury. "I am still combat effective," Taejo replied. "My systems can compensate." Hana shook her head. "Just because you can keep fighting doesn't mean you should ignore your wounds." Before Taejo could respond, his implant buzzed with an urgent message from Commander Ryu. "The Scourge have breached Section 12, Ryu reported. "They are approaching the civilian evacuation zone. All combat units redirect to protect the civilians." Taejo relayed this information to Hana, who immediately gathered her remaining soldiers. "New plan," she announced. "We need to reach Section 12 and stop the Scourge before they hit the evacuation zone." "The most direct route is cut off," Taejo said, accessing the station's schematics through his implant. "We would need to go through maintenance tunnels." "Then that's what we'll do," Hana decided. "Lead the way." The maintenance tunnels were narrow and dark, designed for repair drones rather than humanoids. The humans had to crouch to move through them, while Taejo's larger Voidborn frame made progress even more difficult. As they crawled through the cramped space, Taejo observed the humans closely. Their vital signs showed extreme stress. Their breathing was rapid, their pulses elevated. By all physiological measures, they were terrified. Yet they kept moving forward, toward the danger rather than away from it. "I do not understand your species," Taijo said quietly to Hana, who was crawling ahead of him. "You are clearly afraid, yet you continue toward the threat." Hana paused and looked back at him. In the dim emergency lighting, her face appeared ghostly. "Being brave isn't about not feeling fear," she said. "It's about feeling fear and doing what needs to be done anyway." "This is not logical," Taijo insisted. "Fear is a signal to avoid danger." "Sometimes the most dangerous thing is doing nothing," Hana replied. "If we ran away now, thousands would die. That's scarier than facing the scourge." Before Taijo could question this further, a loud bang echoed through the tunnel ahead. The metal walls around them vibrated. "They're breaking through," Hyunji called from the front of their line. "Move faster," Hana ordered. They scrambled forward as quickly as the narrow space allowed. Ahead, Taijo could hear the distinctive sound of scourge-cutting tools boring through metal. They reached a junction just as a section of the ceiling tore open. A scourge drone dropped into the tunnel, its multiple eyes scanning in all directions. Yunji, at the front of the group, had nowhere to retreat. Without hesitation, she attacked the drone with her combat knife, having no room to use her rifle. The blade found a gap in the creature's armor, but another of its limbs swung around, a sharp blade extending toward her throat. Taejo watched in amazement as Do-Yun, despite his injured shoulder, lunged forward and grabbed the scourge limb with his bare hands. The blade cut deep into his palms, but he held on, giving Eunji time to drive her knife deeper into the drone's control cluster. The scourge convulsed and went still. Do-Hyun collapsed against the tunnel wall, blood pouring from his hands. "Keep going," he gasped. "I'll hold this junction." "You can't fight like that," Taejo said, noting the severity of the human's wounds. Do-Hyun managed a pained smile. "Watch me." Hana looked torn but nodded. "We'll send help back as soon as we can." They continued forward, leaving Do-Hyun with extra ammunition and medical supplies. Taejo glanced back once and saw the wounded human positioning himself to cover the junction, his bloody hands steady on his weapon. When they finally reached Section 12, they emerged into chaos. Scourge drones were attacking the barricades, protecting the civilian evacuation route. Collective soldiers and the remaining human forces were fighting desperately to hold them back. "There!" Hana pointed to a group of scourge brutes attempting to flank the defenders. "If they get through there, they'll cut off the escape route." Without waiting for orders, the human soldiers spread out and opened fire on the brutes. Their coordinated attack caught the scourge by surprise, drawing their attention away from the civilian corridor. Taejo joined them, his plasma lance cutting through scourge armor. For the first time in the battle, he found himself fighting not just because it was his duty, but because he wanted to protect the humans fighting beside him. A massive explosion rocked the station as a scourge brute detonated some kind of organic bomb. The blast threw Taejo against a wall, temporarily disabling his sensory systems. When his vision cleared, he saw Hana pulling a small human child from the rubble. The child was crying, its mother lying motionless nearby. Despite enemy fire all around her, Hana carried the child to safety, shielding it with her own body. In that moment, something changed within Taejo. The Voidborn had engineered fear out of their warriors, believing it made them stronger. But watching these humans, feeling fear yet acting with courage, he began to wonder if his people had removed something essential from themselves. As the battle for Section 12 intensified, Taejo found himself fighting with a new purpose. He was no longer just a Voidborn warrior following orders. He was fighting alongside humans who had shown him that true strength came not from fearlessness, but from facing fear and continuing anyway. And for the first time in his life, Taejo began to understand what fear really meant. The battle for Section 12 lasted another hour. The combined forces of humans and Voidborn managed to hold back the scourge long enough for hundreds of civilians to reach the evacuation ships. But the victory came at a high cost. Of Hana's original 20 soldiers, only 7 remained able to fight. The others were dead or too badly wounded to continue. The collective forces had suffered similar losses. Even Taejo's enhanced body was reaching its limits, his movements slower than before. "Evacuation status?" Hana asked, reloading her weapon behind a fallen support beam. Her face was streaked with soot and blood, one eye swollen shut from a close encounter with a scourge drone. Taejo checked his implant. 65% complete. Estimated time remaining 1 hour and 40 minutes. Hana nodded grimly. We can't hold this position much longer. The Scourge are bringing in heavier units, she was right. Through the smoke and debris, Tejo could see larger Scourge forms moving toward their position. These were harvesters, massive creatures designed to collect biological material for Scourge processing. Each stood 3 times the height of a Voidborn, with multiple limbs ending in collection tools that could tear a humanoid apart in seconds. We need to fall back to the central hub, Tejo suggested. The corridors are narrower there. It will limit the harvester's mobility. Agreed, Hana said. She turned to her remaining soldiers. Yunji, Minjae, help the wounded. Jiwoo, Hyunwoo, cover our retreat. Everyone else fall back in pairs. The retreat was orderly despite the chaos around them. The humans moved with practiced efficiency, helping the wounded and carrying what supplies they could. Tejo found himself assisting a young human soldier named Sungho, who had lost part of his leg to a Scourge acid attack. Leave me, Sungho gasped as they moved slowly through the corridor. I'm slowing you down. No, Tejo replied firmly, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. We leave no one behind. Sungho looked up at him with pain-filled eyes. I thought Voidborn only cared about efficiency. Tejo didn't answer. He wasn't sure when his thinking had changed, but somehow the human concept of leave no one behind had taken root in his mind. They reached the central hub just as the Scourge broke through their rear guard. Jiwoo came running around the corner, firing backward as he ran. Hyunwoo was not with him. Hyunwoo? Hana asked, her voice tight. Jiwoo shook his head, his face grim. He bought us time. Hana closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. Make it count, then. Set up defensive positions. We hold here as long as we can. The central hub offered better protection than their previous positions. Multiple corridors connected here, giving them several fallback options. The ceiling was higher, allowing them to target the Scourge's sensitive upper sensors. As they prepared their defenses, Commander Ryu contacted Tejo through his implant. Report your status. Liaison Tejo. We have retreated to the central hub, Tejo replied mentally. Human casualties are high, but Captain Hana maintains effective command. The Scourge are deploying harvesters. There was a pause before Ryu responded. The collective high command has ordered all remaining ships to prepare for immediate departure. The evacuation will be accelerated. What about the remaining civilians? Tejo asked. Those who cannot reach the ships in the next 30 minutes will be left behind, Ryu stated flatly. The survival of the fleet takes priority. Tejo felt something unfamiliar rise within him, a hot sensation in his chest, a tightness in his throat. That is unacceptable. There are still over 1,000 civilians waiting for evacuation. The decision has been made, Ryu replied coldly. Report to Docking Bay 4 for extraction. Your knowledge of human combat tactics is valuable to the collective. The connection cut off. Tejo stood motionless, processing what he had just heard. The collective was abandoning the station, abandoning the humans who had fought so bravely beside them. What's wrong? Hana asked, noticing his stillness. Tejo hesitated, then told her everything. He expected anger or panic, but Hana's expression remained calm, though her eyes hardened. So we have 30 minutes to get everyone out, she said. Then we'll need a new plan. There is no new plan, Tejo said. The collective is leaving. The station will fall. Hana looked at him steadily. The collective might be leaving, but we're not done fighting. She gathered her remaining soldiers and explained the situation. To Taijo's surprise, none of them showed signs of giving up. We need to reach the auxiliary control room, Yunji suggested. If we can access the station's emergency systems, we might be able to seal off sections and slow the Scourge advance. Good thinking, Hana agreed. Jiwoo, what's our ammunition status? Low, he reported. Maybe enough for one more major engagement. Hana thought for a moment. We'll split up. Yunji, take Minjae and Sungho to the auxiliary control room. The rest of us will create a diversion to draw the Scourge away from the evacuation route. I will go with you, Tejo said firmly. Hana looked surprised. Your commander ordered you to evacuate. I am choosing not to comply, Tejo replied. The words felt strange coming from his mouth. Voidborn warriors always followed orders. Always. A small smile appeared on Hana's tired face. Welcome to the human way of doing things. They moved out quickly, the two groups heading in different directions. Tejo went with Hana's team, his plasma lance at the ready. The weapon's charge was low, but he also carried a scourge blade he had taken from a fallen drone. As they approached the junction that would lead them toward the Scourge advance, Hana stopped and turned to her soldiers. "I won't lie to you," she said quietly. "This mission has very little chance of success. Our goal is to buy time for the civilians and for Yunji's team. If anyone wants to head for the evacuation ships instead, now is the time." No one moved. Taejo looked at the humans around him. Tired, wounded, afraid, yet determined. He had never seen such courage. "Very well," Hana nodded. "Let's make some noise." They set up their ambush at a four-way junction, using the last of their explosives to create traps. When the first wave of Scourge drones appeared, they detonated the charges, collapsing part of the ceiling onto the enemy. The battle that followed was chaotic and desperate. The humans fought with everything they had, using their environment as a weapon when ammunition ran low. Jiwoo rigged power conduits to overload, sending electrical surges through sections of flooring where Scourge gathered. Another soldier named Yunho used maintenance tools as improvised weapons, disabling drones with precise strikes to their sensor clusters. Taejo fought alongside them, moving from one position to another as needed. His Voidborn training had taught him to fight with calculated precision, but now he found himself adapting to the humans' more fluid style of combat. 20 minutes into the battle, Yunji's voice came through their communication devices. "We've reached the auxiliary control room," she reported, "working on sealing bulkheads now. We've also found something interesting. There's a maintenance ship docked at Service Port 12. It's small, but it might hold 30 people." Hope flickered in Hana's eyes. "Can you get it ready for launch?" "Already working on it," Yunji replied. "But there's a problem. The Scourge are in the corridors between you and us. You'll need to find another way here." Hana looked at Taejo. "Any ideas?" Taejo accessed the station schematics through his implant. "There is a maintenance shaft that runs above the main corridors. It would be very tight for someone my size, but possible." "Then that's our path," Hana decided. "Yunji, keep working on that ship. We're coming to you." They fought their way to the access point for the maintenance shaft, losing 2 more soldiers in the process. By the time they reached it, only Hana, Jiwoo, Yunho, and Taejo remained from their group. The shaft was as narrow as Taejo had feared. The humans could move through it by crawling, but Taejo had to squeeze his larger frame through the tight space. His injured side scraped against the metal walls, sending waves of pain through his body. "You okay back there?" Hana called from ahead of him. "I am functional," Taejo managed to reply. "Just a little further," she encouraged. "Yunji says they've got the ship's engines warming up." As they crawled through the darkness, Taejo found himself thinking about the collective ships that were leaving the station. His people would consider his actions illogical, perhaps even treasonous. By choosing to stay with the humans, he had rejected the core Voidborn principle of logical self-preservation. Yet somehow, this choice felt more right than any he had ever made. They were halfway to the auxiliary control room when a violent tremor shook the station. The shaft around them groaned and buckled. "What was that?" Yunho asked, his voice tight with fear. Taejo checked his implant, which still maintained a connection to the station's systems. "The collective ships have departed. Their sudden launch has destabilized the station's orbit." "How long until the station falls?" Hana asked. "Approximately 45 minutes, Taejo replied. "Less if the Scourge damage more critical systems." Hana was quiet for a moment. "Then we keep moving. As long as that ship is intact, we have a chance." They continued through the shaft, moving as quickly as the confined space allowed. Taejo could feel the station shuddering around them, its structure weakening as systems failed and Scourge continued their destruction. For the first time in his life, Taejo felt a new sensation growing within him. Not just concern for the mission, but fear for the humans he had come to respect. He feared for Hana's life, for Jiwoo and Yunho, for Yunji and the others waiting at the auxiliary control room. This fear did not paralyze him. Instead, it drove him forward, pushing through pain and exhaustion. He began to understand what Hana had told him earlier, that fear could be a source of strength when it was fear for others, rather than oneself. As they neared the end of the maintenance shaft, Taejo made a silent promise to himself. If they survived this day, he would learn more about this human way of thinking. He would understand what it truly meant to feel fear and to find courage within it. The maintenance shaft ended at a small access panel. Hana pushed it open and peered into the room beyond. "Clear," she whispered, sliding out of the shaft. Taejo followed, his larger body barely fitting through the opening. The room was some kind of storage area filled with spare parts and equipment. His implant showed they were now just 2 sections away from the auxiliary control room. Yunji, we're in section 18, Hana reported through her communicator. What's your status? We've got the ship ready, Yunji's voice replied, crackling with static. But we have a problem. Scourge are trying to break through the doors. Minjae is holding them off, but we don't have much ammunition left. We're on our way, Hana promised. She turned to the others. We need to move fast. They left the storage room and entered a corridor. Emergency lights flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. The station groaned around them as its orbit continued to decay. How many civilians made it out? Jiwoo asked as they moved cautiously forward. Taejo checked his implant. The last collective transport departed with approximately 70% of the civilian population. That leaves around 900 people still on the station. And the collective just left them, Yunho said bitterly. Yes, Taejo admitted. My people value efficiency above all else. They calculated that the ships were at maximum safe capacity. There's nothing efficient about leaving people to die, Hana said firmly. They reached a junction where the corridor split in 3 directions. Taejo's implant showed that the most direct route to the auxiliary control room was to the right, but his sensors detected Scourge activity in that direction. We need another way, he said, pointing to the right corridor. Scourge ahead, Hana nodded. Left route. It's longer but might be safer. They had taken only a few steps when a loud crash came from behind them. A section of ceiling collapsed and 3 Scourge drones dropped into the corridor. Run! Hana shouted, firing her weapon at the nearest drone. They sprinted down the left corridor, the Scourge in pursuit. Yunho, at the rear of their group, stumbled as a Scourge projectile hit his leg. He fell with a cry of pain. Taejo turned back without thinking. He grabbed Yunho with one arm and fired his plasma lance with the other. The weapon's charge was almost depleted, but the shot hit the lead drone, temporarily disabling it. I've got you, Taejo told Yunho, helping the injured human to his feet. Why? Yunho gasped as they hurried after the others. Why risk yourself for me? Taejo had no logical answer. By Voidborn standards, the correct action would have been to leave Yunho behind. A wounded soldier reduced group efficiency, yet the thought of abandoning the human had never even crossed his mind. Because we leave no one behind, he said finally, using the human's own words. They caught up with Hana and Jiwoo at a sealed door. Jiwoo was working on the control panel trying to override the lock. Almost got it, he muttered, connecting wires inside the panel. The door slid open just as the Scourge rounded the corner behind them. They rushed through and Jiwoo quickly sealed the door again. That won't hold them for long, he warned. We're close, Hana said, checking her map. The auxiliary control room is just ahead. They moved through what appeared to be a research area, with laboratories on either side of the main corridor. Most were empty, their occupants evacuated, but in one lab Taejo spotted movement. Wait, he said, approaching the lab door. Someone is still here. Inside they found 3 collective scientists and a human researcher. They were gathering data crystals and research samples. You need to evacuate immediately, Hana told them. The station is failing. One of the collective scientists, a female with the markings of a senior researcher, looked at Taejo. Liaison, why are you still here? The evacuation order was clear. I chose to remain, Taejo replied simply. The scientist's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. That is not logical. No, Taejo agreed. It is not. But it is right. The human researcher stepped forward. We're trying to save our research. It's a cure for the Taurus plague. If we lose this data, millions could die. Hana's expression softened. We have a ship. A small one, but it might be enough for all of us. Grab what you need and come with us. The researchers quickly gathered their most critical samples and data. As they worked, the station shuddered violently. Alarms blared throughout the section. Structural integrity at 30%, a computerized voice announced. Evacuation strongly advised. Time to go, Hana urged. They left the lab and continued toward the auxiliary control room. The door they had sealed earlier burst open behind them, Scourge drones pouring through. Keep moving, Hana ordered. Jiwoo, Taejo, cover our retreat. Taejo and Jiwoo took positions at the rear of the group. Taejo's plasma lance was almost drained, so he drew the Scourge blade he had taken earlier. Jiwoo fired his last few rounds, taking down 2 drones before his weapon clicked empty. Out of ammo, he reported grimly. Take this, Taejo said, handing him the Scourge blade. He picked up a piece of broken equipment to use as a makeshift weapon for himself. The Scourge advanced, moving with their unnatural skittering motion. Taejo and Jiwoo held them off as best they could, fighting hand-to-hand against creatures designed for killing. Taejo's void-born strength gave him an advantage, but even he was tiring. A drone lunged at Jiwoo, its bladed limb slashing across his chest. The human cried out and fell. Taejo roared in anger, another new emotion, and smashed his improvised weapon into the drone's sensor cluster, disabling it. He lifted Jiwoo and retreated, following the others who had reached the end of the corridor. Ahead was a heavy blast door, the entrance to the auxiliary control room. "Yoonji," Hana called through her communicator. "We're outside." "Open the door." The blast door slid open just enough for them to squeeze through. Taejo went last, carrying the wounded Jiwoo. As soon as they were inside, Yoonji sealed the door again. The auxiliary control room was a large space filled with backup systems for the station. At one end was another door leading to a small docking bay, where Taejo could see the maintenance ship Yoonji had mentioned. Min-jae and Sung-ho were there, along with several civilians they had found hiding in nearby sections. Yoonji had been busy. The ship's engines were humming, ready for launch. "How bad is it?" Hana asked, looking at Jiwoo's wound as Taejo set him down. "Bad," Taejo admitted. "He needs medical attention soon." The human researcher they had found in the lab knelt beside Jiwoo. "I'm a doctor. Let me help." While the doctor worked on Jiwoo, Hana turned to Yoonji. "How many can that ship hold?" 30 at most, Yoonji replied. "And we're already at 25 with the people we found." Hana looked around the room, counting. With their group and the researchers, they were now 32. "We'll make it work," she decided. "Everyone start boarding. Take only what's absolutely necessary." As the others began moving toward the ship, a loud bang came from the blast door. The Scourge were trying to break through. "They'll be in here before we can launch," Min-jae warned, checking the door's integrity on a nearby monitor. Taejo studied the room's layout. There was a secondary control panel near the blast door, separate from the main systems. "This panel controls the emergency bulkheads," he said, accessing the system with his implant. "If someone stays behind to activate it, they could seal off this section completely. It would buy enough time for the ship to launch." "No," Hana said firmly. "No one stays behind." Taejo looked at her. "There is no other way. The ship is overloaded already, and someone must activate the bulkheads manually. The automated systems are offline." The blast door buckled as something large slammed into it from the other side. "I'll do it," Taejo said quietly. "Absolutely not," Hana replied. "We leave no one behind, remember?" "This is different," Taejo insisted. "My void-born physiology gives me a small chance of survival, and—" He hesitated, then continued. "I have learned something important from you humans. Sometimes fear for others is stronger than fear for oneself." Hana stared at him, her eyes filled with an emotion Taejo couldn't name. "There has to be another way." The blast door dented inward as the Scourge continued their assault. "There isn't," Taejo said gently. "Please, Hana, let me do this." After a long moment, Hana nodded. She reached out and gripped Taejo's arm, a human gesture of connection. "You're the bravest warrior I've ever known," she said. "Voidborn or human?" "I was not brave until I met humans," Taejo replied honestly. "You taught me what courage truly means." The others boarded the ship quickly. Jiwoo, barely conscious, was carried aboard by 2 of the civilians. The researchers loaded their precious samples. Yoonji took the pilot's seat and began the launch sequence. Hana was the last to board. She paused at the ship's hatch and looked back at Taejo. "If you find a way to survive this, come find us," she said. "You're one of us now." Taejo nodded. "Go, they need you." The ship's hatch closed. Taejo moved to the control panel as the blast door began to give way. His hands moved over the controls, preparing the emergency bulkhead sequence. Through the viewport, he watched the maintenance ship disconnect from the docking clamps. Its engines flared as Yoonji guided it away from the failing station. The blast door finally broke open. Scourge drones poured into the room with 2 massive harvesters behind them. Taejo felt fear, real, human-like fear, but it didn't paralyze him. Instead, it sharpened his focus. He activated the emergency bulkheads. Massive metal barriers slammed down throughout the section, crushing several drones and temporarily blocking the harvesters. At the same time, he opened the emergency vents, exposing part of the room to space. The sudden decompression sucked several more drones out into the void. Tejo held onto the control panel as the air rushed past him. His void-born body could survive brief exposure to vacuum, but not for long. He watched through the viewport as the maintenance ship grew smaller, carrying Hana and the others to safety. As the air thinned and his consciousness began to fade, Tejo felt something unexpected. Not regret or fear, but a profound sense of peace. He had made his choice freely, not because of programming or duty, but because of what the humans had taught him. He had learned the meaning of fear, and in doing so had discovered something even more important, the meaning of courage. Darkness surrounded Tejo. His body felt heavy and cold. His systems were shutting down to preserve his core functions, a last-ditch survival mechanism of void-born physiology. He had expected to die when the emergency vents opened. The vacuum of space should have killed him within minutes. But something unexpected had happened. As his consciousness faded in and out, Tejo pieced together what had occurred. The station's failing systems had triggered an emergency protocol. The vents had closed automatically after 10 seconds, and emergency force fields had activated, restoring atmosphere to parts of the room. He was alive, but trapped. The Scourge were still in the station, separated from him by the emergency bulkheads he had activated. But those bulkheads wouldn't hold forever. Tejo forced himself to move. His body responded sluggishly, damaged by vacuum exposure and his earlier wounds. He checked his implant, but it was barely functioning. The station's systems were failing rapidly. Estimated time until complete structural failure, 15 minutes, a computerized voice announced, crackling through damaged speakers. 15 minutes until the station broke apart completely. Tejo looked around the room. The maintenance ship was gone, carrying Hana and the others to safety. He was alone. For the first time in his life, Tejo faced his own mortality without the comfort of void-born certainty. His people viewed death as simply the end of function, nothing to fear, merely a state of non-existence. But now, having fought alongside humans, having learned from them, Tejo found himself afraid of death, not because of pain or the unknown, but because there was still so much he wanted to learn, to experience, to understand. A loud bang echoed through the room as the Scourge began attacking the bulkheads. They would break through soon. Tejo dragged himself to the control panel. Perhaps there was another way out. His implant might be damaged, but he could still access some of the station's systems manually. The screen flickered as he searched for options. Most systems were offline or failing. Escape pods were gone. Communication arrays were destroyed. But there was one possibility. A maintenance drone bay in the section below. The drones were small, designed for external repairs. They weren't meant to carry passengers, but they had propulsion systems and basic navigation. If he could reach one and reprogram it, another bang, louder this time. The bulkhead was beginning to buckle. Tejo found the access hatch to the lower level and forced it open. His strength was fading, but determination drove him forward. He climbed down the ladder into a narrow maintenance corridor. The drone bay was at the end of the corridor, a small room with 5 maintenance drones docked in charging stations. They were roughly spherical, about 1 meter in diameter, with various tools and thrusters attached to their outer shells. Tejo approached the nearest drone and opened its access panel. The programming was simple, designed for basic tasks. He would need to override it completely. As he worked, Tejo thought about Hana and the other humans. Had they escaped the station's gravity well? Were they safe? He hoped so. They had taught him so much in such a short time. The station shuddered violently. A support beam crashed down nearby, missing Tejo by centimeters. Time was running out. He finished reprogramming the drone and opened its tool compartment. By removing the repair equipment, he created a small space, barely large enough for his body if he curled into a tight ball. Above him, he heard the bulkhead finally give way. The Scourge had broken through. They would find the access hatch soon. Tejo squeezed himself into the drone, his body protesting the unnatural position. He sealed the compartment from the inside and activated the drone's thrusters. The small machine hummed to life, detaching from its charging station. Tejo had programmed it to exit the station through a maintenance airlock and then follow the most likely trajectory of the escaped ship. The drone moved slowly through the corridor toward the airlock. Through a small viewport, Tejo saw Scourge drones dropping into the lower level, They spotted the moving maintenance drone and scuttled toward it. Faster, Tejo muttered, though the drone couldn't hear him. Its simple propulsion system was already at maximum. The airlock was just ahead. The drone entered and the inner door closed behind it. Through the viewport, Tejo saw a Scourge drone slam into the airlock door, its claws scratching at the metal. The outer door opened, exposing the drone to space. The small machine shot out of the station, its thrusters pushing it away from the doomed structure. Through the viewport, Tejo watched as Proxima Station began to break apart. Explosions rippled along its length as systems failed catastrophically. The Scourge ships circled like predators, harvesting what they could before the final destruction. The maintenance drone continued on its programmed course, moving away from the station. Its small thrusters weren't designed for long-distance travel, but they might be enough to reach a safe distance. Tejo's vision began to blur. The drone's compartment wasn't designed for life support. The air was limited and his injuries were severe. He might have escaped the station, but survival was still far from certain. As consciousness began to fade again, Tejo reflected on his journey. He had begun as a typical void-born warrior, logical, fearless, and certain of his superiority. Now he was curled in a maintenance drone, injured and afraid, having sacrificed his standing in the collective to help humans. And yet, he felt no regret. Fear had taught him something valuable, that caring about others was worth the pain it might bring. The humans' willingness to risk themselves for each other wasn't weakness as the Voidborn believed. It was their greatest strength. Darkness claimed him completely. He's waking up. The voice seemed to come from far away. Tejo struggled to open his eyes. Bright light made him blink rapidly. Easy there, big guy. You've been out for a while. That voice. He knew that voice. Tejo forced his eyes to focus. A human face looked down at him. Hana. How? His voice was weak, barely audible. Your drone's distress beacon activated when your life signs started failing, Hana explained. We were already looking for you. Haunji picked up the signal and we changed course. Tejo looked around. He was in the maintenance ship, lying on what appeared to be a makeshift bed. Medical equipment surrounded him, much of it clearly improvised. The others? He asked. All safe, Hana assured him. Jiwoo's recovering like you. Everyone else made it without serious injury. The station? Hana's expression grew somber. Gone. The Scourge destroyed what was left after we escaped. Tejo nodded slowly. He had expected as much. The collective? He asked next. We haven't made contact yet, Hana said. We're heading for the nearest human outpost. It's about 3 days away at our current speed. Tejo considered this. The collective would consider his actions a betrayal. By choosing to help the humans instead of following orders, he had broken the most fundamental rule of Voidborn society. Logic above all else. I cannot return to the collective, he said quietly. Hana smiled. Then don't come with us. To Earth? Eventually, she said. First to the outpost, then wherever we're needed. This war with the Scourge is just beginning. We could use someone with your skills and your heart. Voidborn do not have hearts in the human sense, Tejo pointed out. Hana laughed. Could have fooled me. What you did back there, staying behind so we could escape, that was all heart. Before Tejo could respond, the ship's alarm sounded. Hyunji's voice came over the intercom. Captain, we've got company. 3 ships just appeared on long-range sensors. Scourge? Hana asked, already moving toward the cockpit. No, Hyunji replied. Collective design, but different somehow. Tejo forced himself to sit up, ignoring the pain. Let me see. Hana helped him to the cockpit. Through the view screen, Tejo could see 3 ships approaching. They were indeed collective vessels, but with modifications he didn't recognize. The communication system activated, and a Voidborn face appeared on the screen. Tejo recognized the markings of a High Commander, one of the collective's most senior leaders. Maintenance vessel, this is High Commander Siak of the Free Collective. We detected your escape from Proxima Station. Do you require assistance? Free Collective? Tejo asked, confused. There is no such faction. There is now, the commander replied. The Scourge attacks have forced many of us to reconsider our ways. Some of us believe the collective's path of pure logic has led us astray. We seek a new direction, one that includes learning from other species, including humans. Hana and Tejo exchanged surprised looks. We would welcome your assistance, Commander. Hana said cautiously. We have wounded aboard. We will send a medical team, Seok promised. And we have much to discuss. The war against the Scourge is changing. We believe cooperation between our peoples is essential for survival. After the communication ended, Taejo sat in stunned silence. The idea of Voidborn questioning their fundamental principles was unheard of. Yet it seemed he was not the only one changed by contact with humans. Well, Hana said with a small smile, looks like you might not be an outcast after all. Perhaps not, Taejo agreed. But I am no longer the same warrior who first met you at Proxima Station. Good, Hana said firmly. That guy was kind of a jerk. Taejo found himself laughing, another new experience. Yes, I suppose he was. As the Free Collective ships approached, Taejo reflected on his journey. He had begun by seeing fear as a weakness, something primitive species experienced because they lacked the Voidborn's engineered perfection. Now he understood that fear was not weakness, but a profound form of wisdom. Fear showed you what mattered. It revealed the connections between beings, the things worth protecting, worth fighting for, worth dying for. The humans had taught him to fear, not for himself, but for others. And in learning fear, he had discovered courage, sacrifice, and something that might even be called love. The maintenance ship docked with the largest of the Free Collective vessels. As the airlock cycled open, Taejo stood with Hana and the other humans, ready to face whatever came next. He was afraid of the unknown future, afraid of the continuing Scourge threat, afraid for his new human friends. But it was a fear that strengthened rather than weakened him. Battling beside humans had taught Taejo the true meaning of fear. And he would carry that lesson with him always, a gift more valuable than any technology or weapon the Collective had ever created. As he stepped through the airlock with Hana at his side, Taejo knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them not with the cold logic of the Voidborn, but with the courageous heart of humanity. And he was no longer afraid to be afraid.